Andrea Davis is a former teacher, certified digital wellness educator, screen time navigator, and founder of Better Screen Time, where she shares family tested ideas from the tech trenches as a mom of five. Her mission is guiding parents on a slow tech journey so they can worry less about tech and connect more with their kids. Her work has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, National Geographic, and USA Today, and she's spoken to international audiences about helping families and schools navigate the digital world. Hi, Andrea. It's so nice to see you.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here.
I'd love to start from the beginning. In your Better Screen Time founding story, you talk about that moment that you realized you'd made a mistake giving your 12-year-old a smartphone. Could you tell us about your journey to make change inside your own family and like maybe what your advice would be to other parents who might regret introducing tech too soon?
Certainly. Well, as busy parents, we have a lot of reasons that life might suddenly become chaotic, right? And for us, that was a move across the country. And so we moved from Illinois to Oregon, where we now live, and our oldest was turning 12 at the time. And she was the ultimate oldest child, like the kind of kid that cleaned her room without being asked, super responsible. And she was leaving all these friends behind in middle school who were starting to get phones. And we were moving to this place where we didn't know anyone. So a smartphone seemed like a very logical solution. This was the Wild West days of smartphones. We handed over a phone to her purely in our minds as a communication device. And it didn't take long for me to realize that it was too much too soon. I did spend some time thinking about it, trying to decide what to do. And ultimately, my husband and I both just felt like we needed to hit the reset button. And what that
Yeah.
meant was going back to a brick phone. And so we did it. I will never forget that conversation in the kitchen. And she was sitting at the kitchen table, literally tears streaming down her face. I'm
Oh,
feeling bad. I'm feeling like the worst parent ever. But also with just this gut feeling that I knew that we needed to take a step back and reset. And so we started over, gave her a brick phone. She had access to a lot of things on the smartphone. Again, we have to remember this was before Apple's screen time even existed.
yeah.
So I know that's hard maybe for parents who haven't parented, didn't have to parent in that Wild West era, but it really was crazy. And there was just access to so many things. And especially as first, this was our oldest child, there was just a lot that we didn't know. And so I guess my advice to parents is always to use this line that I really love. And it is, I reserve the right to be wiser today than I was yesterday.
Yeah.
And I think we can use that line with anything, but especially when it comes to parenting in the digital world, because we're all
Yeah.
facing a lot of new things that we haven't had to before. And so we have to be brave enough to say, I got that wrong. We're going to start over. And then what does that look like moving forward?
Yeah.
That's what we did.
I love that. And I give parents that same advice all the time, which is we are all learning. That is so true. Even me, I've been in social media since 2007 professionally. It's changing every day. Technology is
Yeah.
evolving every day. Now we've got AI coming. Like that is just the nature of technology. So we're all learning all the time, and that's okay. Right. But I
Yeah.
love the notion of like we all make mistakes as well, because not only is that true, right, and I've talked to all my parenting experts about this as well, like kids need to see that their parents can make mistakes and then how they handle the mistakes, right, and being able to walk that back, I think, is incredibly empowering, right? And I don't
Yeah.
know if you agree with this, but I always tell parents like you can always use the learning as kind of the way that you roll back the mistake. So, for example, I just saw a new study. Wow, I didn't know this before. Let's look at this together, right?
Hmm.
And that is why I'm changing my mind, right? So I feel like these things go together, right? There's a learning piece and then there's the mistakes piece. And every parenting expert, every therapist says the same thing, which is that this is actually a good thing to model to your kids, that you make mistakes and how you handle them. So I don't know if you wanted to add to that, but I wanted to touch back on that point about
No,
mistakes.
I love that. And I think, yeah, not only are we modeling that for our kids, but we're also staying humble, and we're humble enough to say that this is part of growing up, and also just telling our kids like technology moves much faster than science. It moves much faster than government regulations, and
Yeah.
it always will. It
Yep.
always will. And so as parents, we're always going to be playing catch up when it comes to knowing what's best when it comes to technology, which is why I tell parents a lot, like, trust your gut, trust the
Yeah.
spidey senses.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, even if you don't know the mechanics. And I hear this a lot. I hear this from parents and they'll say, I just look at my kid and I know that it's not good. Like I don't need the
Mm,
study. I don't need
yeah,
the, any kind of supporting evidence.
yeah,
And I think that's so, so true. I think I've said this before, but it's almost everybody's dirty little secret, right? Like
yeah,
it's something where every family struggles in some way to some degree. And I think we
yeah,
just all need to just, I don't know, maybe give each other like a big hug and like just understand that we're all struggling with this. And that's just the
totally.
nature of it. It's so true.
Yeah.
Okay. So you and I actually both advocate for what's called a slow tech approach. So can you talk people through like what are the benefits of choosing that approach?
Yeah, well, I've been living and preaching a slow tech life from the time I became a parent. So we actually put our TV in the closet and we only pulled it out for like the Olympics and family movie night. And this is long before social media or any of that. This was like just my approach to parenting.
Yeah.
And I really love that because at that age, in that era of being a parent, like, we went to the library and we rode our bikes and we did the things that to me is like part of a healthy childhood and the childhood that I grew up with and experienced. But I think today parents have to make a much more conscious choice to choose that lifestyle
Yeah.
because when my oldest is now almost 21, and when
Mm-hmm.
my oldest child was little, I didn't have to make those choices so much. Like, we
Yep.
didn't have portable devices in our pockets. I didn't have a smartphone as a mom when my oldest was little, and there were no iPads. My kids didn't have school devices at school. I mean,
Yeah.
so many things. So I think that's important, is just that mindset for parents to realize that they have to, number one, choose that lifestyle. And then what does slow tech look like? Well, that looks different for every family.
Yeah.
But it definitely means choosing matters most to your family ahead of technology. And I think for most families, that's family connection, that's time together. It's choosing to, I leave my phone home on date night every Saturday night. My husband and I have a date, and for years, I just decided I'm leaving my phone at home. And to me, that's a slow tech move
Yeah.
because I'm choosing to leave it there. So I think as parents, just any time that we can choose the analog, then do that. And especially when your kids are young, you have quite a bit more control over their environment.
Yeah. I mean, and I'll just add to that because I think both you and I are not anti-tech, right? At
Right. Yeah.
all, right? And to me, I always say slow tech means less is more and later is better. Like if we really
Mhm.
had to like sum it up into one
Yeah.
short phrase, it's often as simple as that. Like we do technology in our home, right?
Yeah.
But we have maybe different boundaries that might be different than in your family,
Yeah.
right? But to me it's a philosophy similar to what you're talking about, right? Where family connection, real world experience, those things come first. And I always say in my parent eds, the metaphor I use is like when our babies are born, we don't just give them a steak dinner. We give them, milk, right, or formula, right? Then we do the purees. Then we do the solids, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
process. And if you introduce too much too soon, for a younger kid, like there's really nowhere to go from there, right?
Yeah.
So those are the things I just wanted to add,
I
but
love that.
yeah, but I love the. Also, you brought up putting your TV in the closet, and it's so funny because you're right. 10 years ago, it was like almost a whole different world. It's happened that
Yeah.
quickly. But the other thing that's kind of brilliant about that, not that I think anybody would do that
Oh
nowadays,
yeah. No.
but it's what they can do is one of the tips we give, which is like this out of sight, out of mind concept, because
Hmm.
there is when you see your device, and think about it as like an adult, if you see your smartphone walk by, you're probably going to check, oh, do I have a text, whatever.
Yeah.
But we tell parents, like, okay, if you do use iPads, we don't in our house, but if you do, charge it somewhere where they can't see it, put your
Yeah.
remotes away, right? And
Exactly.
those things do, it's again a small tip. And like you said, different things might work for different families, but it is really a way for us to signal that this is something that, maybe isn't something we want to look at all the time,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. That's
So,
high on my list of tips as well. So out
yeah.
of sight, out of mind for sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so I would love to talk to you about screen time as a reward or punishment. This is something where you and I think, are in lockstep. I think we both agree that tying screen time to rewards and punishments is tricky.
Yeah.
But in my experience, this is a very common practice amongst parents of all ages. So, can you explain why this is tricky and what parents can do instead?
Yes. So as portable screens became mainstream and internet made everything accessible 24/7, anything that would make this really easy, like how
Yeah.
can I motivate my kid to do other things and how can I keep them off of screens? And so like a screen time reward chart just seemed like the ultimate idea. So what we started to see is just these graphics popping up on Pinterest and all over that were like, okay, if you do XYZ, all your chores and practice piano, all the things, then you get screen time. And
Yeah.
so essentially what happens when a child is looking at something like that and they're thinking, okay, well, number one, if screen time's like in big bold letters at the bottom, that's obviously the reward, right? So
Yeah.
we're honestly just training them to see screen time as the ultimate reward and also to choose that all of the time rather than maybe choosing another hobby or another way to decompress. And so what happens is I call this a screen time habit loop. And so it's very similar to James Clear's habit loop he talks about in Atomic Habits. And this is something that I've shared for years, but essentially your kids are seeing that trigger, which might be the screen time reward chart or whatever it is, and they get their stuff done. And then they're following through with these steps, and the reward is always screen time. And
Mm-hmm.
so the other way that we see this happen a lot is when children are maybe having a meltdown, perhaps they're at the doctor's office and they had to get a vaccine or something
Mm-hmm.
else, or they're in the grocery store and they're just like throwing a tantrum and parents are handing their kid a screen. That's another way that we create that habit loop as the child thinks, okay, well, when I'm sad or tired or upset, then I get the screen.
Yeah.
So what we want to try to do is move away from that as much as possible. We realize that sometimes we find ourselves in crazy moments where maybe that's what we need to do. But for the most part, if ahead of time we can prepare, okay, this is what I'm going to do when my child has a meltdown, or this is what I'm going to do when my kid comes home and wants to automatically get on screens. It's okay to have expectations of things that need to be done ahead of time, but we
Yeah.
want to offer a lot of different ideas of ways to decompress and unwind. And screen time might be one of those things,
Mm-hmm.
but there should be a lot of other choices and options that we've talked through ahead of time as a family as ways to unwind. And so that's really, we just don't want to train our kids to turn to screen time as
Yeah.
a reward.
Yeah. And you touched on this a little bit, but the way I explain it, and tell me if you agree with this, is when you do that, when you tie it to reward, when you tie it to punishment, you're also making it more special and more coveted than it
Yep.
needs to be, right? Like tech should be a tool. Yes, maybe it's entertainment, right? But it should just
Mm-hmm.
be kind of like something we do, right? And
Yeah.
not something where, to me, if they're so worried about, I'm going to lose it if I misbehave, or I can get more if I just do really well. I find that actually makes kids more obsessed with it. And I
Yeah.
think you're kind of saying the same thing, but that is kind of the easiest way I can think about it. And I'm so glad you made the distinction, because parents will ask me, well, what about homework? Like, don't they have to get their homework done then they get their screen time. And I'm like, well, that's different. That's just saying we need to do the things we need to do first before we have entertainment. And that's
Yeah.
life, right? So
Yeah.
I'm glad you made that a distinction, because I think that's super important, because of course they're going to want to, it's going to be much more fun to get on a screen for entertainment than to do homework.
Yeah.
But, making sure that they get their obligations out of the way first, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I don't think that's a reward at that
Yeah.
point, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Okay, I want to ask you about group chat. I know you speak about this a lot, and it is, again, just hot topic, both from parents and both from the administrators that I work with in schools. So at Dopamine, we teach parents that group chat is a closed version of social media. That's the way that we describe it.
Yeah.
What we mean by that is, even though they aren't exposed to strangers necessarily, right? All the same challenges persist. So there's the dopamine elevation, there's social exclusion, there's FOMO, social comparison, kind of all those things that become very tricky on social media. So what is your take on group chats, and what advice would you have for parents on this topic?
Yes. Well, group chats can get messy really quickly.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of factors in there. Like, so you might have some kids who have parents who are monitoring it, but you have plenty of kids who have parents who are not monitoring it.
Yeah.
And there's kind of this thing that happens where maybe somebody says something and then somebody else adds something on top of that. And before you know it, you're kind of down this rabbit hole, and it can get negative and ugly pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, where do we go from here when you don't have anyone on the group chat that has a fully developed brain,
Yeah.
and it's no fault to the kids, but we just have to remember, like, where are they at developmentally? Where are they at socially? And are they really prepared to have these type of conversations in this environment? And the answer is no. So I've just never seen it go well. And this happens year after year. Again, I have
Yep.
5 kids, and I've watched this generally happens a lot, like 5th, 6th grade.
Yep.
And because maybe these kids don't quite have phones yet, but they've got, tablets at home, or they've got the school devices, and they've started some kind of a class group chat. And so, yeah, the kids just aren't quite ready for this yet. There's constant messaging, and so kids are already trying to have to keep up with, like, oh, I gotta respond and I have to reply to people. So that alone is definitely just a bad thing for kids to already have to feel like they're having to respond and being committed to this conversation.
Yeah.
And so there's so many reasons why it's not a great idea. So I really recommend waiting until like high school if possible for those kind of group chats. Obviously, like middle school, they're going to want to have a conversation with their closest friends. And so I think as parents, you just like, okay, well, pick your closest 3 or 4 friends. And as parents, we just need to keep a close eye on that, and then be talking to them, be educating them about what's appropriate. And they're learning, remembering to be patient because they are still learning.
Yeah, I totally agree with you though on pacing it. I think that's a great suggestion. So if you are going to introduce a device of whatever kind, start with a one-to-one, right?
Yep.
Then, like you said, pick your closest friends, and then that's it, right? And luckily, you talked about when you started there was no parent controls, but nowadays you can control who gets added, to your kids, at least on Apple iOS. My son has an Apple Watch that we got around age 12. So there is some good things like that where you can limit, hey, I don't want people he doesn't know, connecting with him and things like that. So I think that's a great suggestion. I agree that I would say middle school is the very youngest, although that age is so problematic for so many reasons. But yeah, I mean, I classify it as social media as well. It's not as problematic because, like I said, you're not talking to strangers and showing things to billions of people, right? So it's a little bit more closed, but yeah, I've it's again my number one complaint that I get from parents of all ages, from administrators. I would say it's actually more problematic than social media. That's where the
Mhm.
drama, the bullying, all these things are happening over the weekend and then coming in, and these deans are dealing with it on
Yeah.
Monday.
Yeah.
And I cannot imagine the workload of putting up with this. And I'm so glad you talked about the barrage of messages, because that's one of the reasons, one of the things we talk about as well. And I mean, just mechanically, every time you get a notification, you're getting a little dopamine hit, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the stress of it. It's like these kids are not taught screen etiquette. So they're all going back and forth, sending 10 texts at a time. By the time you look at it, there's hundreds of texts that come in the course of like a short period of time. Like, who can manage that? I can't even manage
Yeah.
my adult group text where people generally have it together and know how
Right.
to behave, right? So I'm
Exactly.
glad you manage like the workload. Not to mention, if you are monitoring, which you should, if you're going to say yes, you need to monitor, it's
Yeah.
a lot of work. When I finally said yes to group text, I immediately regretted it, because now I have to go through and scroll through
Yeah.
hundreds of texts.
It's a
And I'm
part-time
sure
job.
it's a full-time job, and I'm sure I'm missing things, and it's like, I think the last thing I would say about this is it's not even about trusting your kid, because I hear that a lot. Like, my kid's a good kid and I trust them. I think it doesn't matter, because they don't have a fully formed brain. They're not taught
Yeah.
screen etiquette. They could be pulled into drama without even being part of it, which happened to my son, who got pulled into a chat. He didn't participate in
Mhm.
the things that were going wrong where the kids got in trouble. But if you're
Mhm.
part of that group, you're going to be brought into it.
Yeah,
So
you're associated with it.
you're associated. So, I mean, I just have so many things to say about it. I'm going to add one more thing, because you touched on it and I think it's so important. The iPads. So many
Mhm.
parents are saying yes to the iPad. I get it. It's status quo. It's something that we've all maybe gotten used to for kids. But a lot of these kids, these parents are saying, well, I wouldn't ever get them a smartphone, but they're doing everything you would do on a smartphone on an
Yeah.
iPad. And yes, I get it's better, because mostly it's at home. It's not the supercomputer in your
Yeah.
pocket. But I think that's something really important to note too, is iPad is just a bigger iPhone. Yes, it's mostly just Wi-Fi. It's mostly at home. So you've got some controls, but I have a lot to say on this subject, obviously. So, but those are the main things that you kind of touched on that I wanted to highlight. What do you think about the iPad versus iPhone, how they're essentially the same?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my kids don't have tablets, so that tells you how I feel. But we have a
Yeah.
family tablet, but it
Yeah.
has limited functions on it, and
Yep.
nobody's can message on it. So,
Yep.
yeah, I just think it's one more avenue that parents have to monitor, and you just make your life easier by avoiding that altogether.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, I say this all the time. One of the reasons I'm slow tech is I do not need more workload,
Right.
and I
Nobody
know,
does.
because I'm in the tech industry, that once I give something, I'm going to have to monitor it.
Yeah.
At the very least, there's going to be some tech support issue that I'm going to have to deal with. And then we get into, when you do start letting them communicate, the oversight and monitoring, and
Yeah.
it's exhausting. And so less is more really helps, because it's like, just give what you're willing to manage, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think
Totally.
where we get into trouble mostly is when the parents aren't overseeing or managing. And I get it. I'm a
Mhm.
parent too. Like, I want to use it as a babysitter as well. I need that hour break or whatever it is. But I
Yeah.
think what we're both saying is we might be able to, we not might, we can make better choices about what we do say yes to on that device, whatever it is. So,
Agreed. Yeah, I
yeah.
love that.
Okay, cool. So let's go back to your story about your daughter and the smartphone, right? And I think we can all relate to the social exclusion aspect of, when you're waiting, and your kids are begging, and how hard that is. So what can parents do or say if their child is begging for a smartphone? And how do you know if your teen is ready for one? And I'm stressing the word teen.
Yep. So we just we have a lot of family conversations, and I think this is the best way to go about it, is just to have an honest conversation with your kids. You don't need to try to I don't know, just be honest and straightforward about it. But having conversations, asking your kids, like we sat down with our kids and we said, you know, what does it mean to be responsible and what does it mean to be emotionally mature? Again, this was years ago when we started Better Screen Time, and we made a big list with our kids. Okay, so responsibility is like you get up for school on your own, you do your chores without being asked, you know, do your homework. If you're emotionally mature, you don't throw a fit when things don't go your way. You are kind to your siblings. And it's like, it's a lot of things. And we said, yeah. And those are the things that somebody needs to be able to do before they're ready for their own phone, unlike their own.
Yeah.
And our kids started to get that, like understanding, you know, obviously at first they're like, oh, like really? But they started to understand that, like, yeah, this takes quite a bit of responsibility, even though they're still wanting one. We're talking about the kind of those milestones. And so years ago, what I did, since my background is in teaching, I then turned that into self-evaluation that we use called Am I Ready? And
Mm-hmm.
this is an opportunity for teens to self-reflect. And we call it a self-evaluation for teens, but we all know that kids start begging for a phone. So parents do use this with their kids so that they can delay until they have teens that
Yeah.
want a phone. And it's just, again, as a teacher and being in the classroom, and I taught junior high, so I really recognize the need for that age and for adolescents to have some ownership and to have some say. And so
Yeah.
this self-evaluation that we created at Better Screen Time is an opportunity for kids to do some self-reflection, to be able to ask themselves some questions like, do I get myself up for school on my own, or do my mom and dad still have to wake me up? And then the other side of the self-evaluation is for parents. And we also realized and learned this the hard way that there is a huge responsibility that parents have to
Yeah.
get prepared. So this isn't just about learning about parental controls, but this is also about what conversations have we had in our home about
Mm-hmm.
cyberbullying, about sexting, about sextortion,
Yeah.
about AI. I mean, all the things. And I think when you read that through that list, you think, oh, nope, I haven't done my job. And it's just like your kid's not going to
Yeah.
know everything, but like, have we sat down and talked about pornography and talked about these things? And then that, as a parent, that gives you the opportunity to reflect and be like, okay, no, we're not quite ready yet, because there's still some conversations that we need to have, both as a family, but also I really recommend doing one-on-one as well. So we have like general conversations as a family where we create a family tech plan and we have some boundaries that everybody follows. But then we have maybe some additional conversations that are more age appropriate, that require a little bit more detail, maybe about things that are a little bit more serious and
Yeah.
intense, that we will have with our teenagers one on one. And I call these
Mm-hmm.
teen tech talks. And this
Yeah.
is what I've done with my teenagers. And that's just helpful when you're preparing for the phone. So first you're like, I think the big question that I teach and I talk about a lot is just, is your teen owning their life? Are they
Yeah.
owning their life? Like, do they have a job? Do they, are they taking care of their homework? Like, do they do chores and responsibilities at home? Because I can tell you, 9 times out of 10, a lot of the teenagers and adolescents that are struggling with a lot of phone use and watching TikTok or playing video games all
Mm-hmm.
the time, they're not helping out at home.
No.
Most of the time, they've got a free pass. And so that's like
Yeah.
one of the first things, like when I'm helping families, I'm like, okay, tell me what responsibilities your kid has at home, because I can guarantee you in my home with 5 kids, everybody's helping out, and they have to be. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think it's just, are they owning their life, and are they kind and respectful to other people? Those are the two
That's
things.
Yeah, that's a huge one, right? Because I
Yeah.
can't remember. Oh, it was, I don't know if you know Amy of The Real Parent. She said something that always sticks with me, which is like, if you can't be kind or respectful in the real world in your day to day, why would you hand them a microphone,
Yeah.
to then take that
That's so
to the
good.
world, right? I
Yeah.
loved that little metaphor. So I love the Am I Ready? It's amazing because I think I think people do maybe focus more on the kids for the ones that are even thinking about this. They're focusing
Mhm.
on, is their kid ready? But I love that, are you ready as a parent? And I
Mhm.
think, just going beyond what we talked about earlier, right, into just those conversations that you might not want to have yet. I mean, that is huge because that tells you, okay, if I'm not ready to have the conversation, I'm not ready to have them encounter this stuff without me either,
Yeah.
right? So that is so huge. I love that. And then here's the other thing I was thinking about as you were talking earlier. We were talking about, the chore charts or whatever as screen time as a reward. What I love about this is that also eliminates the need for this, because if you've established the chores and the expectations and the things that they're supposed to be doing, you don't have to do the chart with the checklist,
Yeah.
right? Like it's not a reward, it's not a punishment anymore. It's just an expectation. Like these are
Yeah.
the things we expect you to do. And again, I like simplicity. To me, that is so much easier. I've experimented with these, even though I generally don't agree with rewards or punishments. I've experimented with, okay, let me print out a thing and see
Mhm.
if that works so they can visualize it. I do not, it's pain for me. Like, I don't want to print it. I forget to mark it off. Like, I don't
Right.
want to do that. So I
Yeah.
think it's so much easier to just blanket say, okay, I'm ready because I'm already automatically doing these things I'm supposed to be doing to contribute
Yeah.
to my family. And I'll add one more thing, and I've heard this from many experts. Kids feel better about themselves when they're contributing to their family. Like that is
Yeah.
so important. So
I love
so
that.
yeah, I think it ties all that up into a nice bow. And then lastly, I think you talked about tech plan, but for like my device agreement when my son got his Apple Watch, because we did an agreement even for that.
Mhm.
It did say, so again, not a punishment, but these are the things we expect. And if we don't see these things, then we may need to take a break from it, right?
Yeah.
Like that's another thing that you can do, again, without the chart and the reward and the punishment, just setting the expectation. Because I think a lot of parents think, okay, and I'm sure this is true, the kid will be on their best behavior and do everything they need to do, and then they get the thing and then they forget all about it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that agreement on the back end also can hold them accountable. And I think that's what you meant by the tech plan, right? The family tech plan.
Yeah. Yeah. And everybody has different philosophies here, but I've never been a fan of screen time contracts. I don't call them
Yeah.
that, but I mean I like agreement and I think that works well. But we just a better screen time, we just always call it a plan. And so we have a family tech
Yeah.
plan that's for everybody. But when, our teens are moving on and they are starting to get devices of their own, then we sit down and we create a little plan together between the two of us. And I think, again, just having an understanding of child development, adolescent development, we can't ask our teens to never, like, to sign a dot and say, I'm never going to do XYZ.
Yeah,
Because they're
totally.
still learning and they're still
No.
growing. So we can sit down, we can make a plan and we can say,
Right.
okay, like, our goal obviously is to not ever be mean to somebody online, but something might happen and you might say something you regret. And like, I think again, it's talking about what does that take to reset. And so we have our plan and there might be consequences, exactly
Right.
like you said, like that there needs to be consequences,
Yeah.
but we're acknowledging that we're learning as we're going here.
Yeah. And you're so right. We can't legally have kids sign contracts until they're 18.
Yeah,
So we can't expect them to sign something and then magically agree to it. So that's
yeah,
a
exactly.
important point too. Let's talk a little bit about AI. Obviously, we're all just trying to keep up with this here.
Yes.
But from my latest statistics, it's 72% of teens have used an AI companion. 52% are using chatbots regularly. So, do you think AI, whether it's as an assistant or companion, because those are two very different things, but often like a chat GPT will do both, right?
Mhm.
So, is this safe and healthy for kids? It's a big question.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that is really important for all of us to consider and as we're looking at technology in our kids is always age.
Mm-hmm.
So again, my background's in teaching, but I've taught a lot of different ages. So like I've taught preschoolers how to swim. I've taught seventh graders state history. I've taught college kids beginning Spanish, and just like I
Yeah.
just kind of taught a lot of random things to all ages. And I think we just really have to come back to like what's age appropriate. So when it comes to AI, and we're looking at like our young kids who are need the thing they need most right now is play, and they need love, and they need relationships with the adults in their lives, and they need to be learning. So I don't think AI has any place for our young
Mm-mm.
children. So
Yeah.
I'm talking like elementary, no. Like
Yeah.
it just doesn't belong anywhere.
Including AI toys. I think you'd agree with me
Yes.
on that, right?
Yes,
Okay. I
yes.
just want to
We recently
clarify.
did a big post on AI toys at
Yeah.
Better Screen Time, and yeah, no AI toys for sure. So we're leaning into imagination, we're leaning into play, we're leaning into learning, relationships. And then as we move into middle school, we definitely need to start having conversations about it, because unfortunately, these AI tools are just baked into everything now.
I know.
So every software application and that's on the school devices, it's there.
Yeah.
Again, we might have certain rules or boundaries at home, and that might vary from home to home, but like what are the rules at school? And the schools still don't even know.
I
Like they're
know.
still trying to figure this out. So
I
this is
know.
pretty frustrating territory right now. And I've already sent my fair share of suggestions and
Yeah.
complaints, and yeah, to my own school.
It sounds
And
like
I've been,
your school loves you just like my school loves me.
yes. Luckily, I have a few people that work in the school district office that I have some good relationships with, and
Good.
they do want to make some changes, but not everyone feels the same way. And so this can be tricky. So I just think at home we need to be talking a lot about, what feels right, what's appropriate, but there
Mm-hmm.
are some guidelines that we can go by. Number one is just teaching our kids that AI is never your friend. It's
Mm-hmm.
not real.
Yeah.
It's never going to care about you. And even sharing with them, like with our middle schoolers and high schoolers, for sure, sharing some of the sad statistics that we're seeing of
Yeah.
kids who've taken their lives because of conversations they've had with AI bots. And our kids need to know about that. And right
Yeah.
now, they may not know anyone personally that's been impacted that way, because this is just also new within the past year,
Yeah.
but it's already happening. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
we need to share those headlines with them. And then as our kids move into high school, then obviously, again, it's still conversations about what's appropriate and when is it appropriate, and having conversations with school. But telling our kids, really like leaning into your own intuition. I think one of my main concerns, especially as kids are developing like a lot of writing skills and communication skills, is that they'll never really find their voice. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that AI quickly takes away from you. Like if anyone's ever written, like if I put something in an AI, I'm like, well, that's not how I said it, and I don't
No,
know.
I know. Right.
But like to a kid, or someone who's just learning, even a young high schooler, even a high schooler who's still learning to write and they haven't really found their voice, it just that can easily be taken away. And so I think it's having that kind of a conversation with our teens, where it's not like, don't ever use it, it's
Yeah.
bad. It's very much talking about like the downsides, upsides, when maybe should we use it, when shouldn't we. And then one of the biggest things we talk about Better Screen Time is just that it's an advanced tool. And
Yes.
so it's not appropriate for kids, and it should be used in moderation, as, even for high schoolers and teens and young adults, if they
And with
truly want to think for themselves.
supervision, I would say,
Yes.
even up until those later ages. I have a million things to say about this, but I'll try to keep it brief. Because frankly, I use it every day. In addition to dopamine, I'm still, working as a marketer, right?
Yeah.
And so I have the same exact experience that you talked about, because I will use it to help me write copy.
Yeah.
And even if you put in, like, I will put in previous articles I've written or things that I've written or things that I've done for a brand, right? It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't nail the tone. Even
Yeah.
if you tell it, hey, copy this, you then have to go in and say, nope, that's too flowery, or you're using too many short words, or like you have to really understand the mechanics of writing in
Mm-hmm.
order to, even if you're having it help you write something, for it to be able to even capture your own tone.
Yeah,
So, and that's a very advanced thing. Like
it
I've
is.
been working on writing copy, since the beginning of my career, right? Usually with
Mhm.
copywriters, now with AI. And that's a
Yeah.
very, very sophisticated thing. So I think that you brought up voice is super, super interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been playing with my recommendations and let me know what you think. I don't think it's appropriate at all until likely around age 16. Yes, have the conversations, everything else. Age 16 is probably at that point, start teaching them how to use it as an assistant, right?
Yeah.
Here's how to use it to help you with research. Here's how to use it to run ideas by, like whatever it is, start, to use it as a tool. And that might be a little late. I don't know. But I think the dangers are just too
Yeah.
much. I wish it was separate. I wish ChatGPT would not be your friend. I wish it would just do the assisting and then I'd feel
Mhm.
differently. But
Yeah.
because you could also go on there and, have personal conversations, relationships. And I know OpenAI is saying, oh, we're working on that, or we've turned that down, or we've made erotica not available until 18. I know they say that, but it's still too easy to jailbreak at this
Yeah.
point. You can get
Totally.
around all that stuff by just, and I'm not going to say how to do it actually, but you can get around it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the kids know
So
how.
they kids know how.
Yes.
So for me, and I just visualize like just what I know, what teachers know, because teachers don't even really know, they're not trained how to use it. I would say maybe last couple of years of high school, yes, start teaching them how to use it as a tool, just like you would do the other research tool. And I say that because you need to have a body of knowledge before you use this stuff, right? I feel like you
Mhm.
need to learn as much as possible. Yeah, you have to develop your own voice, but you have to know enough about the topic you're having it help you with
Yeah.
to be able to spot a hallucination. I know hallucinations are also getting better, but if we just blindly trust it, and you brought that up earlier, that just does not work. Maybe someday that'll change. I don't know, unless they change
Yeah.
the incentive of AI for engagement, which is where we are now. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, for me, and I know, and I'm talking about really the advanced chatbots like the chat GPTs. Yeah, it's baked into so many other things where you can't avoid. I'm not really talking about that. I'm
Yeah.
talking about teaching them how to use it as a tool. So I think it's much later. And I think companion AI, 18 plus. And I
Yeah,
think
for
we're
sure.
seeing, was it Replica or Character AI? I can't remember which one that had introduced the 18 plus. Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Or they're trying to do parent controls. Anyway, even in, they're moving too fast too, by the way,
Yeah.
the people building this, but even they are starting to see that this is just an adult thing. So that was a
Yeah.
lot. Do you agree
No,
with that?
yes.
Is
Yep. No, I
Yeah.
mean that's essentially what I was saying. And I think it's just crazy to me because like I saw the founder of, ChatGPT, like, I
Yeah.
don't know, he was talking about getting help with a newborn, like raising his kid or like something. And like literally it's just chat GPTing it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe call your mom or like
Yeah.
there's a lot of trusted information even on the internet about parenting
Yeah.
that like I mean, I understand that that's like where it's gathering this information, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we definitely want to teach our kids like this should not be your first like go-to
Yeah.
for everything in life. There
Yeah.
might be a few things, but
Sure.
for not it just is not for every application in your life.
Yeah. I mean, I like your assessment that it's an advanced tool because I
Yes.
completely agree
Yep.
with you on that. So
Yeah.
try the basic tool first,
Yeah.
before you go to that. So,
Yeah.
gosh, I mean, I feel like we could talk about this for an hour. So let's move on. But I'm glad that we're on the same page because I honestly don't think a lot of people have thought through these guidelines and recommendations yet. So
Well,
it's
parents are
happening.
still just trying to figure out if their kids even have access to it at school,
Yeah,
what they're accessing. So it's
it's
moving
crazy.
really quickly.
It's so fast. So that's also why I say no for now. It's like until we
Yeah.
figure all this out, maybe someday that'll change. But for now, we just don't need it for kids. So
Mhm.
that's where I am. Okay, I'd love to ask you one more thing. I know you have a hard out in a couple minutes, but really quickly, in like a couple minutes, I know you're a former teacher, and we talked already about the laptops and tablets in the classroom. There is a growing backlash against these. You know about Sweden. They're moving forward with reversing their previous of digital technologies in childhood. So that includes actively reintroducing textbooks, reducing digital tools in the classroom. So really quickly, what are your thoughts on school issued or school required devices before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'm cheering Sweden on. I'm definitely on the.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, as a former teacher, but also a mother of five, and I've just seen how technology has changed over the years. So my oldest is almost 21, my youngest is 11, and I just think of what education looked like for my oldest even versus my youngest at age 11. And I'm definitely an advocate of pen on paper and reading real books, especially in those elementary years. There's so
Yeah.
much research that shows us and tells us that kids retain information better
Yeah.
when they're writing by hand. They are able to comprehend better. So there's a lot of value in that. Obviously, there is a place for technology in education, and it
Yeah.
can be very useful. But I think for the most part, we've lost sight of what aspects of that technology is actually beneficial to our kids, and in what aspects was just like a real teacher with a book and some paper more beneficial to our kids. And so I think it's time for the US and all countries to really scrutinize and look at the tools, the tech tools that they're using, and look at your test scores. I mean, test scores have
Yeah.
gone down. They went
Yeah.
down even before the pandemic, so we can't just blame that. It's
Yeah.
really technology is can in many ways be a huge distraction. There's so many schools that still haven't removed access to YouTube. And so, I mean, just this
Yeah.
morning I was talking to a mom who's like, yeah, my 10-year-old was watching YouTube yesterday at school, and
Oh
that's so
my gosh.
frustrating. We
I
want we
know.
want our kids to be learning and also developing a relationship with the teacher and not getting distracted. It's just can be too big of a distraction. So again, I
Yeah.
think we need to look at what's age appropriate. That's
Yep.
something that we keep forgetting. And we need to look at what tools are actually benefiting kids.
Yeah, that is so well said. I think you covered it all. I so appreciate your time. I know you have to run to another one. Thank you. I mean, it helps that you and I are really on the same page about a lot
Yes.
of these things, but the way that you communicate and the tools you developed are just so, so well done. And the tips you give for parents, if they're not already following you, I know it's ironic telling people to follow you, but it's really, really helpful for the digital parenting. So I've really been appreciating that just myself as a parent, even though I'm in this space. So thank you. Thank you. And
Thank
also thank you
you.
for bridging the education to the family, because that is a huge disconnect. So I think your voice really does that with your background as a teacher. So I
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time. Thank you. And I know we'll be talking again.
Hey, I appreciate you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.